And I feel like in large part there's a lot of misconceptions about funeral homes and, the industry in general. So if
Welcome
there's
to
one
Behind the Frame, where we go beyond the LinkedIn bios and Instagram highlight reels to talk about what really happens when you're building something from scratch. I'm Jay Duffy, co-founder of Frame Wealth Partners, business owner, husband, dad, and guy who still wonders if winging it counts as a legitimate growth strategy. Spoiler, it does sometimes. Join me and my amazing co-hosts, Morgan Watson and Annette Quigley, as we sit down with someone who's built a business or is knee-deep in the messy middle of it. And we talk about the real stuff, the pivots, the late nights, the wins no one celebrated, and the lessons no one warned them about. So grab a coffee or something stronger. We're going behind the frame.
Good morning, folks. Welcome back to Behind the Frame, a podcast where we talk honestly about building, running, and surviving business ownership. I'm Morgan Watson, co-founder and managing partner of Frame Wealth Partners. And today I have with me a dear friend and our senior partner, Annette Quigley. So Annette, today we have Brent Francis, the owner and director of Parkview Funeral Home. Looking forward to this conversation. I think there's a lot of good stuff we could talk about. Before we get started, we're going to talk about our weekend review. So this is where we talk about any weekend wins, thought I was smarter than I thought I was, or kind of I'm too old for this. So let me ask you, how was your kind of weekend review, so to speak?
So I can honestly say for the first weekend in probably about 20 weekends, I intentionally was very lazy. I measure my, I get it from my mom. It's, I have my list of, measuring my productivity of the chores and things that I'm able to accomplish. And I was very intentional, actually, this weekend of being a little lazy, and it was just lovely. So
Nice.
I count that as a win.
Oh, that's a great win. It's funny. I think I had the trifecta this weekend. Had a weekend win. I thought I was smarter than I actually was, and I'm too old for this. So growing up down south, it's cold, but we never got snow. So I kind of appreciate the snow. Sunday morning, wake up, snow's on the ground. It's beautiful. And I'm like, this is perfect. For many of you that may not know, I'm in the process of moving from one part of town to the other part of town. So thinking ahead, I'm like, all right, I'm going to move all our yard equipment and everything over to the new house, not knowing we're going to have snow here in the first part of December. So I got up Sunday morning before church and realized I've got about 100 yards of driveway. I get to shovel snow blowers at the new house, everything else at the new house. So I realized I'm not nearly as smart as I thought I was. And secondly, I'm much too old to be doing that. So
That's great.
yeah. So today, Mr. Francis, looking forward to having you here. I know originally Annette met you kind of through your business. So Annette, would you love to introduce us to Brent?
Yeah, so Brent and I met due to the passing of a dear friend of mine, and I came into his funeral home, and just we kind of connected, I guess you would say. And I've always known that the funeral industry in general, you just have to have that steady hand. You have to have compassion. You have to have a way to really help navigate families through, in most cases, is the most incredible loss of their lives. So just really, after our connection and knowing you, having been a business owner for as many years, a generational, business owner in your industry, just wanted to have you on to, talk about your, experience and share a little bit with the world, how it is that, you are successful in the industry and some of the struggles you may have, had. And so welcome to Behind the Frame, Brent.
Thank you.
Glad to
very
have
much.
you.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely.
So let's do a little background to start with. So third generation funeral home director and owner. So your grandfather started it, correct?
My grandfather started a business in Canada, my native country, but I've been here since 1995, a citizen for a good many years now. And so my grandfather, during the Depression, his two older sisters were already off at university to become school teachers. My grandfather wanted to become a school teacher too. He also liked the funeral business. And apparently there wasn't enough money to send him off to school first. So he became a funeral director, and he worked for this gentleman at his funeral home. And then this funeral home and furniture store came for sale in a community near where they once worked when my great-grandfather was still running cheese factories. And so my grandfather, through the help of my great-grandfather, bought that gentleman's business in 1936.
Funeral home and furniture store.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Interesting combination.
So, I know there's been a lot of changes in your industry, and we'll talk about that, but it seems to be very much a family-driven business. It's, 1, 2, 3 generations. Is that still the case?
That is in steep decline. A lot of our children, mine, are included in this. They don't want to do what we do. They see the hours we work and they don't want to do it. They have other options in life. Some kids are following in their parents' footsteps and taking over the family business, but a good number, is not the case anymore.
Okay.
And I feel like in large part, there's a lot of misconceptions about funeral homes and, the industry in general. So if there's one thing that you want, folks to know about when they come, to you, for example, you're the first, stage necessarily after, someone has passed. Is there something, like a words of wisdom that you have to share along those lines?
Just they should do a little bit of research, because some people, there are some businesses that they have dealt with over the years that business has changed dramatically based on how competitive price-wise they are in the area, and they may not want some lavish arrangements. They just want a basic cremation, which is the same procedure at every funeral home, is exactly the same, but the markup that some funeral homes charge for some basic services varies heavily from place to place.
Okay, good to
And
know.
it's tough to make those decisions, because sometimes the person dies unexpectedly in the middle of the night, and they call the police. The police are there giving them pressure, saying, you need to call somebody, or this is what we have to do. We have to call the Maryland State Anatomy Board because your loved one cannot stay here.
So you're saying ahead of time, just know what funeral home in your community that you
Do
might
a little
wanna
bit
do
of
that business
research.
with.
If they know their mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandparent isn't in the greatest of health, that something could happen, they should do a little bit of research.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, what's one of maybe the behind the scene things that happens at funeral homes that may surprise people that they don't know they wouldn't always expect that to happen?
Well, I think for many people, because close friends of mine, customers that I've known for taking care of several family members, they'll sometimes ask me, "Can I see your embalming room?" And I'll take them down, and all they'll see is the table, some cupboards. They'll see my embalming machine that pumps my fluid in, and they'll see a couple sinks, and they're really let down. They're let down. They say, "Well,
I thought there'd be a lot more.
yeah." They say, "Well, I thought you hung people from the ceiling to drain the blood," and
Oh, good heavens.
no,
That's
we don't do
movies,
it.
I guess,
They're just totally let down. They're expecting something really exciting,
Yeah.
and it's just not there.
Interesting.
And I would think in your industry, especially as long as you've been in the industry, there might have been like 1 or 2 services that impacted you to where they still
Oh, yes.
stay with you, whether it was earlier in your career or now. Anything you can share along those lines?
Oh,
Like anything
I still remember the funeral for this young mother when I was still working up in Toronto. I still remember how I felt at the cemetery looking over at her young daughters.
Yeah, that's, I was thinking about this, and we'll kind of talk from the business to being a business owner. How difficult is it to manage the emotions and kind of the sympathy you have to have specifically in your career, but then also switch over to have to make kind of hard business decisions. I would think those kind of are at odds a lot of the time. Is that difficult to manage?
They sometimes are, and I just, you just need to not let it be personal. And I just have the attitude that for me to do my best work to get them through what they're going through, I need to offer compassion, but I also need to keep a level head so that I can guide them properly through what they're going through.
It makes sense. And to piggyback on his question is you have to wear many hats. You
Oh,
can't
yes.
share, the dad and the husband and the business owner so which one do you feel stretches you the most?
I'd say a lot of times just being a business owner, because you have to have firm control, and because the funeral business is not a daily commodity item. It's not like a Coca-Cola, going to McDonald's, where you have to be very wise about your expenses, because certain things like a lot of modes of advertising just don't work because you have people saying, hey, if you do this with me, we're going to increase your business. And it just doesn't work. You have to just manage your expenses very wisely and just say to yourself, sure, I may want to do that to my building, but what will that get me in the end? Will that bring profit to me, or is it just something that I personally want and my client families really won't notice or really care at all, because my business does not have the revenues that it used to years ago. And those revenues are not going to come back just because of the trend to cremation and other lower cost things.
No, that's interesting. You know, as you've worked now 3 generations, obviously you've learned with your father, then you got into the business. What are some, and we talk a lot about having those mentors. What were some of the business decisions you saw maybe your father making that you didn't understand the impact at the time, that now as a business owner, you're like, okay, now that makes sense to me?
There are 2 main things I learned from my father, and it was as if they were really at the time meant to be learning things. I remember when I was quite small, because my family's funeral home is from a really small town, but this small town not too far from us, that funeral director was going out of business. So there was a sale at his funeral home for the assets, for the equipment. And I remember being there with my dad, and I was maybe 9 or 10. And he brought his one furniture truck, and another small town funeral home near me, they bought that gentleman's embalming table. So then we ended up taking it to them because they didn't have a truck. And I remember this funeral director that was going out of business had about 5 boxes of embalming fluid sitting there for sale. And my dad said to me, with the business that he was doing, he's got enough embalming fluid there for about 4 years. No wonder he's going out of business. And that stuck with me. So I don't buy any supplies I don't need. I have suppliers say, well, if you buy this many boxes at once, we can cut it back to this much money. That doesn't matter for me, because that's maybe saving me $30, but it just always stuck to me. I purchase what I need, and I don't stock up. And the second thing I learned from my father was, and this was another thing that it wasn't meant to be a learning thing, I was taking accounting in high school in the 9th or 10th grade. And I remember being in my dad's office at the furniture store, and he was just doing his work, sitting at his desk, and I said to him, because we were doing balance sheets and income statements at the time, I said, Dad, did you make income statements and balance sheets every month? And it was his body language was very interesting. He just stopped. Everything stopped. His body froze. And he just looked at me. And he said, any businessman that needs to do income statements and balance sheets on a monthly basis does not really know how his business is doing. And he's probably getting ready to go out of business if he needs those statements to tell him how he's doing.
Wow. Great point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I feel like obviously as a business owner, you have to manage your staff. You have to manage the families that come in to some extent and provide guidance. Do you feel like it's hard sometimes if you have staff and or families to, even though you have come to a place where you're not compartmentalizing, you're removing the emotion, you're focusing on, to your point of, making the hard decisions. But do you feel like you have to, for staff and families alike, provide that guidance for them to also remove emotion to the best of their ability when they're making those decisions?
Yes, sometimes I do exactly that. I'll even tell families when some part of the family wants this, some wants that. I just explain to them what each of those will cost, and I'll say, I'll leave the room so you can talk amongst yourselves, and I'll just be sitting on the stairs over across my lounge room, and you can come and get me once you've made a decision. I always let them know that both choices are good choices. It's what works 100% best for their family.
We've got a few clients we work with in this industry, and I'm curious for your take on it. We've seen a lot of corporate and P&E buying into the funeral business. How often do you get approached with that, and what's the pros and what's the cons of those choices?
I have never been approached by one of the corporate funeral home cemetery owners. I never have been. I've kind of been surprised because they do own some properties near me, but they never have. It's something that started really in the 70s, really got going in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
And a lot of some funeral directors really got hit hard when this one company, which was called Lowen Group, which was based out of British Columbia, Canada, when they failed. Because what Lowen was doing was they would offer so much cash, and then they'd offer a higher number that was cash in their stock. Well, a lot of owners, they took the higher amount, and they didn't divest of that stock, even when it started failing. And so they ended up just not really getting nearly as much for their funeral homes as they had hoped. And there are some cases nearby that I really feel sorry for the children, because the children at the time that the father sold the business, they were funeral directors themselves. Like, there's this one case in the city where, and then she's like, sure, she had a half decent position within that funeral home, that corporation, but she's still an employee and her name's on the sign, when really it should have been like it always was.
Yeah.
That you make a deal with your parents, and her husband, who she married, he was a funeral director also, so they could have more than purchased this funeral home over time from the parents, where how a lot of it used to happen is the parents keep ownership of the land and building, and then you first pay off the business, and then you buy the land. That they essentially, on the building and the land, they do what's called hold paper.
Yeah.
Is the nickname. And that was very, very common. But when the big corporations came around offering boatloads of money, that really, a lot of these funeral homes really weren't even worth it. they sold because there were 3 large players, and they would, in some cases, they would just bid against each other like it's sport,
Yeah.
wanting wins.
Yeah.
And it was sad because these funeral homes had been multi-family businesses for 3, in some cases, even 4 generations.
Wow.
And then they went to the big corporation.
Yeah. Quite sad.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so many decisions as a business owner you have to make, and trying to. No one has that crystal ball, so that's really where that experience and, again, having those mentors of people who may have done it in the past can kind of give you some different perspectives on it. So thank you. We're going to jump into our next section, which is our hot or not. So we're just going to rapid fire shoot some questions at you. Tell us if it's a hot trend or not. If you want to elaborate on it, that's great. But we just want to kind of get a feeling of what we see in your industry. So cremation, hot or not?
Very hot. Cremation is probably in Maryland. It could have taken over burial now. It may really have taken over burial. My last 3 were all cremations, but they were traditional cremations where it's essentially like a traditional funeral. The deceased is embalmed, dressed, looks very nice in the casket. It is my rental casket, so everybody sees a nice solid oak rental casket that they don't know it's not a rental casket. And then the deceased is in their own container that's highly flammable, and that's what they go to the crematorium. And so the family is getting that traditional viewing and service that they wish. And in my last case, I was down in a church in Bolton Hill where they wanted a church service. They're still able to get that and then cremate as the deceased wanted. So it's
best of both worlds.
And it's easier for people, expense-wise too, that want to repatriate the person back to where they're from. Because international shipping of a deceased, I just dealt with that to get somebody back to the Philippines, this nice young lady who unfortunately passed away. And airfare alone is almost $5,000 for that. On top of all the other charges, I have to deal with the embassy. It's a lot of work, whereas cremated remains, very little work with the consulate/embassy, and they just take the person on a trip home, on a trip to that country on their carry-on luggage.
Wow.
Interesting. How about, I keep hearing a lot about the eco-friendly green burials where someone can be put into a tree. What are your thoughts on that?
The green burial, there's a really nice cemetery in Windsor Mill called Serenity Ridge. It's just been open maybe 3 years. I've had quite a few burials there. I like it. It's basically, it's just old time burial. It's just, there's no concrete vault. There's no embalming, and it's just certain containers that are approved. Most of mine go into a pine box, and that's all these people say, just throw me in a pine box. Well, if you've ever said that, I can put you in a pine box. And it's, the pine box is just made up the road in York, Pennsylvania. It's to Jewish Orthodox standard, which means that it doesn't have any metal in it. It's just the wood and glue.
Oh, wow.
And that's it. And it's very, very simple. They still get a graveside service, and it's just that there's rules on the type of monument that can go at a green cemetery. Most of them, that's all part of their package, and it's a rock that they engrave their name in, so it sits flat, and in terms of care, they just don't keep the grass low like a traditional cemetery does. But it is, I like it a lot. That was my call for a new death at around 8 o'clock last night.
Okay.
Was green burial for this gentleman.
Interesting.
How about personalized celebrations of life, where it's either a remembrance or a mourning or a party? Are you seeing any kind of trends in that?
Yeah, and they can still have, there's still, I see more going on at places like social clubs instead of churches or funeral homes where the person was a member of that organization. And so the family's acquainted with that organization. They may be a member of it as well. It may be at a small yacht club down in Sparrows Point or Middle River, and they'll have some drinks and they'll have a good time. And it doesn't mean that they give up anything because they can still have a minister there. They can have a religious portion if that's what they wish. And for veterans, I've even arranged for honors to be presented at that other location,
Nice.
Okay.
that they will do it. Yeah, I say if that's what the family wants, I think that's a great thing because a life needs to be honored. And what we as funeral directors don't like, we don't like when nothing is done. That to me, if you just want to have a handful of family members at your home and just each say something at the person's urn, to me, that's perfect if that's what fits your needs, but at least do something. Just don't make it look like this person was alive one day and then they're deceased and gone. That every life deserves to be remembered and to be memorialized.
Totally agree. And I feel like we're so spread out now. A lot of our clients, they have grandchildren and children all over the United States, sometimes the world. So what about like the live stream funerals? Do you get requests for those where somebody, from afar that's not able to attend in person is able to?
I've had a
See
few
that through live
requests and we did do it for them.
Okay.
But it's not too often that I get a live stream request, but I do it when they wish it.
Okay.
So kind of a follow-up on that, because that's an interesting question, is I think perspective or perception is we see funeral homes as not high-tech kind of businesses. Are you seeing technology kind of growing into the funeral business, or is it still more the low-tech side of it?
It's both. We get there are companies out there that do contact us about, we'll do this for you. And it's another one of those things that you have to manage cost-wise versus everything. I don't like some of the technology. I don't like. To me, it just doesn't have, there's moving billboards that some funeral homes have and inside their businesses. And I'm just a little old fashioned that way. I like things more soothing,
Doesn't have the
refined.
honoring
Right.
feel
I
to
don't
it.
want to advertise anything. I just want you to feel at home in my building.
I feel like everything today, I was just having this conversation with someone, is kind of over the top. Like you can't just say, do you want to go to the prom? You have to have a promposal, or you have to have a baby moon or a gender reveal. Like I feel like everything is extra. So I feel like families that are providing like eulogies and remembrances of their loved ones, it's kind of that pressure almost that they can't just divert to, maybe someone, yourself or someone on your team reading it on their behalf, that they feel that kind of pressure to get up there and do that. So you feel like that's kind of trending where they have to do, not over the top, but something that really just kind of makes it more memorable for the family, or makes the people that are in attendance feel like it's different, that they have to stand out in that way. If that
Yes,
makes
well,
sense.
most ministers and priests will, when the funeral is in my funeral home, they will meet with the family first. They'll talk to them over the telephone, and they'll also come early just so that they can get facts about the deceased. Plus, I'll fill them in about what I know so that they can tailor some things. And then
Okay.
they will also invite people up during the middle of the service to speak, and they'll usually say, don't feel you have to come up here to the lectern because I know it can be nervous public speaking, if you just want to stay seated where you are and just say a memory or a story about the deceased, please do.
How about, are you seeing a change from flowers to charitable donations? Or is that about what it's always been?
I'd say it goes up and down. It's just one of those things that I'll have a funeral that it's not a big family. There's not a lot of people come, but there will be a lot of flowers. And other times it's the exact opposite, where it's a very big gathering and there won't be a lot of flowers. It's just some people are flower senders and some people aren't. And some people, even if the obituary I have in there that they have me type in there, that in lieu of flowers, please make a donation. Some people just, they are flower senders and it
Yep.
doesn't matter. They are sending a flower.
Yep.
And that's just the way it is. I remember a good 10 years ago when I let a funeral director friend of mine use my building for a visitation of his. And I remember this lady giving me a hard time because she said, my flowers should be closer to the casket than it is. And there was probably 50 pieces of flowers. She said, I was a better friend of hers than so-and-so's.
Good heavens.
Her, and her flowers closer, you should exchange them. And I said, and I explained to her the truth, which is this is how we do things.
Yeah.
Family flowers go closest. It doesn't matter when they arrive. We arrange things for family flowers. Then after that, it's first come, you're closest.
Yeah.
And obviously her florist, or she ordered them later, they didn't come as quickly. And she did not like that reasoning.
Interesting.
Yes.
I would think that would be really hard. Just, again, we kind of touched on this earlier, just managing the emotions inside your career. You know, we talk in our side, the reason people like to use us is we take the emotion out of the finances. But I imagine, obviously, people obviously very attached to their dollars, but loved ones, it's much, much more ratcheted up. I imagine that would be a hard part, sometimes walking that line of trying to do things the right way and being sensitive to, but not overly.
Oh, and sometimes you have to referee disagreements.
Sure.
Yep.
You do, and has there been physical issues in my building? Yes, there has, but it was all because one party that I had negotiated when they would be able to come into the funeral home, when everybody else was gone, that ex-wife of the deceased decided that she is going to drive into my parking lot when 10 minutes before their time, when the other party was outside, and that she would not just stay in her vehicle and wait for them to get in their vehicles and leave, that she would hop out of her car. And so with her two children of the deceased, and then the one daughter from another marriage, the marriage before that second marriage, those two women, that young lady and her former stepmother, started arguing, and stepmother got punched.
Oh, my.
And
Oh, my heavens.
I didn't like it happening, but if stepmother would have done as directed, there wouldn't have been any troubles. There wouldn't have been any troubles, and I really feel she did it on purpose. So that was a time that the negotiation didn't totally work as I had planned.
So you're funeral director / therapist / referee
Oh, yes. Just
on
like
occasion, right?
I have a baseball bat hidden behind a curtain inside. I do have a permit to carry a pistol, and sometimes I do have it on my person. For nice little old ladies that live way down in the city, I will deliver their cremated remains of their husband to them. And they don't live in the greatest of neighborhoods, so I have to protect myself. And there's times because of it may be a criminal's death that I have the funeral. I have to make sure that nothing happens, and I've been threatened, and
Wow.
just deal with it. And
Yeah.
Do you feel like, because some of the emotions are, I want it to be done this way, or, Dad wanted it to be done that way. So do you feel like in our business, we encourage our clients to do, kind of estate planning ahead of time to say, these are my wishes. And I know part of what they can do with you is like prepay. So I would feel like if they prepay, maybe it's coming from them so that it
Right.
takes some of that emotional, away from the family having to decide or argue about what comes next. How do you get the word out, as far as the prepay? Because I know that that's part of, what you do. Like, how do you advertise that, so that people can do that proactively ahead of time?
a lot of times they just know. Some people just like to deal with things ahead of time. Other people do not.
Right.
So sometimes they just want to get it taken care of. They know, I don't want this to burden my kids. I want to get this done and over with. And we sit down and everybody has a level mind, and I think they make the best choices that way and get exactly what they want. And sometimes it's where I'll get a call because the person who it's for is in a nursing home and they're about to go on Medicaid because their assets are getting down to the threshold, what they call the spend down amount.
Yeah.
And the member of the family, the daughter, will call me up and say, we need to prearrange this week, or blah, 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 or my mom can't go on Medicaid. And then I'll quickly get them in and we'll do it so that they can get the person on Medicaid. So some of the prepaying is definitely done for need, because one more month and whatever assets they do have, they're all gone.
And are they locking in like today's prices when you do the prepay?
Yes. Well, a funeral business does not have to guarantee it.
Okay.
And not every funeral home does. And there are some in the area that do not. I guarantee my prearrangements. And how it works is that because it's in an interest account, and so that earns interest, so the interest helps any
purchasing power stays.
any price changes I may have. Some prearrangements, it's short a little bit from my current price. It's just part of doing business. I believe business has risk,
Yeah.
and that's just the way it is. And if you're down a little bit on this one, well, so what? That's business. That's life.
So we're here on our last part. We're going to do the plead the fifth. So we're going to ask you a bunch of questions. You got to give us an answer for all but one of them. So one of them you can plead the fifth, but everything else you have to give us an answer on.
Okay.
So Annette, you want to start us off?
Have you ever had to tell a family no to a request?
Yes, because some requests are just not, they're just not doable with the regulations that I have and the rules that other places have, like a cemetery. Because when you're in a cemetery, you're under the cemetery's rules. When you're in a church, you're under the church's rules. So I've had people say, well, we want to have the casket open after we arrive at the cemetery. We want you to reopen the casket. We want that casket open for the graveside service. And I've had to tell them, I'm sorry, that's not what that cemetery allows. If you want to ask them for special permission, we can do that. And you just have to say, no, I'm sorry. They said no, that's against their rules. And
Is there a request that you get often and you're like, oh no, not this again? It's kind of either it's a trend or something that it's going to be a problem, and it's just one of those requests you hate hearing.
well, I do not like having to do women's nails, so I don't. So I pay my daughter, who's in the psychiatry field. I pay her to do the nails.
Okay.
So sometimes if I just know what color they want, I'll send her a picture and saying, before you come, I need you to buy this the color you need, and I'll have the lady arrange her hands in certain position to make it easier for my daughter. But I don't like doing nails for some reason. I don't know why.
Just not your thing.
It's just not your thing.
I think it's the monotony of just doing the same thing nail after nail. Is where I'm doing cosmetics. I'm only doing one thing, and then I'm doing my highlighting, then I'm powdering, then I'm doing my lips. It's all broken up. Whereas with the nails, I don't know if I think it's also a perfection thing that I'll see a little bit that I didn't get, and then I'll want to get it. And
Makes sense. Have you ever had to let somebody go that you've hired just simply because they're not emotionally suited for the job?
yeah, basically, yes, she wasn't emotionally suited because she tried to, I started her out at doing a different thing for me. And then since she had worked at another funeral home, I thought, well, she's got nice clothes, let me use her during a visitation. And she just tried, since she was a similar age of the deceased son and his friends, she just tried to be their best friend and butt into their conversations, and it just wasn't working.
Makes sense.
Have you ever had to ask someone to leave the funeral home? Not a worker, but someone there mourning or
Yes, that there has been a couple times that the family says, well, we don't want her here.
okay.
And then it's a difficult thing because sometimes the reasoning, I kind of thought that it was very petty, and I kind of thought, well, but I still have to do that because that's what they requested, and so that's what I had to do.
The referee again.
Yes. Yes.
Are there any early career mistakes that you swear you'll never make again? Like a mistake that you obviously learned from, but you'll never repeat?
Yes. I will not spend dollars on advertising like I did, because when you're first starting up and you're not doing a lot of business, when somebody says, oh, we can increase your business, we'll reach this many people, you can fall for that. Whereas now I've done it, I've learned from my experiences, I'm not going to do it again. And that's another thing that my father always preached, is you learn from your mistakes. I don't care if you do anything, but you just don't do it again.
Yeah. Makes sense.
What's one word you would use to describe your profession?
Changing. It's a very changing profession. I look at the people I went to school with, and then I look at the ones now that are in school to become funeral directors. And there are some good ones, but it's just day and night, just their professionalism, how they dress, how they carry themselves. It's just very, very different.
That's interesting. If you asked me to pick 50 words, I don't know if that would have been one. I think outside looking in, you see the career as this is what the career is, and it's always been kind of that way.
I
So
like the tradition of it. Just
that's interesting that's the word.
for instance, I have a bowler hat that when I go to the cemetery and it's cold, I will put that derby on. I will wear a bowler out to the cemetery in the cold.
Yeah.
And just certain things I see at other funeral homes. Years ago, it wouldn't have gone on. Like, you would never see a person wearing a wool beanie cap out on the cemetery working. It was, no, it doesn't matter how cold it is. You have to look professional, and that's,
Yeah, like a respect thing.
yeah, I see funeral directors wearing sunglasses at the cemetery, which that was always a no-no. Still a no-no for me. It was always, if you need to wear sunglasses while you're driving, fine. But then as soon as your car is parked, the sunglasses come off, the people see your eyes. And that was the way it always is. And these little things that were always what I would have considered an industry standard norm are now really, I don't see them as norms anymore. I had a funeral director that I did a favor for from another state, because the rule is that for every burial in most states, a funeral director license in that state has to be there for that burial. So they were from another state, and they called me up and asked me, we have a burial at Parkwood Cemetery on this day at 11 o'clock. Are you available to be there? And I said yes, and this is what my price is. And so I was just shocked at that whole situation, because they weren't that far away. They were, after my shock, after it, I looked everything up on my computer where they were from. They were just 7 hours away. You leave early, but you drive a hearse. You transport your loved one in a hearse. That's the way we always did it. It's the way I would still always do it. And especially when you're going to a cemetery. And they just transported the person in a white GMC panel van. And the funeral director, he never took off his sunglasses. His name is on the sign. I think his parents or grandparents started this business. He didn't even have dress shoes. He had on these black Vans or something like that. And I was just shocked at it all. I was just shocked, and he wasn't wearing a vest. He never even did up his jacket. And I just thought, is this where and he wasn't that much younger than me. I would put him in his 40s. And I just thought, is this what is the norm for your area? And then when I got back to my funeral home, of course, I looked up where this funeral home is. They're in a pricey resort near the water area in the other state. And I'm thinking, wow, I was just shocked.
Well, I don't want to speak for you, Morgan, but I know we can certainly see the passion and compassion that you have for your industry. We're so thankful that you came here today to give us a little bit of insight.
Thank you
and
very
for-
much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And for anyone out there listening, if you want to learn more about the planning process, please, visit Brent at Parkview Funeral Home. And what is your address?
7527 Harford Road, Northeast Baltimore, just 4 doors in from Parkville.
Awesome. Brent, thank you so much for
Brent,
being
thank
here
Very,
you.
very
today.
much, and Merry Christmas to everybody.